The sun was sinking behind the hills of Montana, spilling gold across the vast ranchland owned by Jackson Reed, the man locals called the Millionaire Cowboy. He wasn't born rich. His hands had learned the language of hard soil, the rhythm of horse hooves, and the silence of empty nights long before fortune found him. But that evening, the silence on his land wasn't peace, it was warning. The air carried tension, and even the horses seemed restless, stamping the ground as if they sensed what was coming. Near the wooden fence, a young man ran toward him, covered in dust and panic. His name was Cole, a boy no older than 20, with a voice trembling like the wind. "Sir, if they come, hide my sister." His words hit Jackson like a stone to the chest. Cole was the ranch helper, quiet, loyal, always keeping to himself. But now his eyes told a story far darker than he could explain. "Who's coming?" Jackson asked, voice calm but sharp as a whip. Cole hesitated, gasping between words. "The ones who took everything from us. They're coming for her, sir. Please, just hide her." Jackson looked toward the barn where a young woman stood watching from the shadows, barefoot, scared, holding a small wooden cross in her hand. Her name was Ilara. She had the kind of beauty that didn't boast, but quietly demanded attention, like the first light after a storm. Jackson's jaw tightened. "Cole, no one's touching her. Not while I'm breathing." He didn't ask more. He didn't need to. The haunted look in Cole's eyes said enough. Trouble wasn't a stranger to Jackson. Men with money and land always attracted wolves. But this wasn't his fight until now. Because when he saw the fear in Ilara's eyes, something inside him stirred, something he thought he'd buried years ago, the instinct to protect, no matter the cost. The night crept in fast, painting the ranch in shades of blue and black. The wind howled through the valley, carrying whispers of danger. Cole kept pacing by the window of the ranch house, checking the dirt road that led into the property. Ilara sat by the fireplace, clutching her hands together. "They'll find us," she whispered. "They always do." Jackson poured a cup of coffee and placed it on the table near her. "They won't find you here." She looked up at him, uncertain. "You don't even know who they are." Jackson's eyes met hers, steady and unwavering. "Don't need to. I've dealt with men like that before. Fear feeds them, courage starves them." Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, though no rain came. The air felt charged, heavy, like the land itself was holding its breath. Cole finally spoke. "They run guns across the border, sir. They killed our father when he refused to help them. I barely got Ilara out alive. They'll come tonight. They always finish what they start." Jackson nodded slowly. "Then tonight we finish it for them." The hours dragged. Every creak of wood and whisper of wind felt like an intruder. Jackson checked his rifles, loaded the revolver at his hip, and made sure the horses were locked in the stable. Ilara followed him, her voice soft. "You don't have to do this." He didn't turn. "Yeah, I do." She hesitated. "Why?" Jackson finally looked back at her, and for the first time she saw the storm behind his calm eyes. "Because I once had a sister too, and I couldn't save her." Those words hung heavy in the air. Ilara said nothing, but her gaze softened. Somewhere deep in her heart, she felt a strange trust forming, an unspoken belief that this man, this stranger, wouldn't let the darkness touch her. Hours passed. The old clock struck midnight. Then came the sound, distant engines rumbling down the dirt road, headlights slicing through the fog. Cole froze. "They're here." Jackson stepped out onto the porch, boots sinking slightly in the damp soil. He could see 3 trucks approaching, dust rising behind them. Shadows moved inside the vehicles, armed men, their laughter cruel and confident. The leader stepped out first, a tall man in a black coat, his face marked with scars. "Well, well," he called out, voice echoing across the ranch. "You must be the cowboy who thinks he can hide what's mine." Jackson didn't flinch. "No one here belongs to you." The man chuckled, pulling back his coat to reveal a revolver. "That girl does. Her daddy owed us. Debt's gotta be paid." Jackson's hand twitched near his holster. "Debt's cleared when the man's dead, and her father's gone." The stranger smirked. "Then she pays in his place." He started to step forward, but before his boot hit the dirt again, Jackson. Revolver was out, cocked, and pointed straight between his eyes. The men froze. "You take one more step," Jackson said slowly, voice low and deadly, "and you'll be fertilizer before dawn." The tension snapped like a whip. The men reached for their guns, and the night exploded in fire and thunder. Bullets tore through the air, glass shattered, horses screamed. Jackson moved with precision, years of training, instincts sharpened by pain. He ducked behind the water trough, fired twice, dropped 2 men. Cole took cover behind the barn wall, returning fire with shaking hands. Elara, inside the house, prayed under her breath, tears streaking her face. "Stay down." Jackson shouted, reloading. One of the trucks burst into flames as a bullet hit the fuel line. The explosion lit the field like daylight. Smoke curled up into the black sky, and the attackers faltered. The leader cursed, shouting orders. But Jackson wasn't done. He stepped out of cover, advancing like a force of nature, bullets whizzing past. He fired again, 1, 2, 3, and silence followed. The leader fell to his knees, clutching his shoulder, rage twisting his face. "You don't know who you're dealing with," he snarled. Jackson walked closer, his boots crunching on gravel. "Neither do you." He aimed again, but before he could fire, Elara's voice cut through the smoke. "Don't," she cried. Jackson froze. She ran toward him, trembling. "He's not worth it. Please." For a moment, their eyes met, and something human flickered inside Jackson's hard stare. Slowly, he lowered his gun. The man sneered, stumbling back toward his truck. "This ain't over, cowboy." Jackson didn't answer. The man drove off, the remaining few following, leaving behind silence and smoke. Cole collapsed to the ground, shaking with relief. Elara knelt beside him, hugging her brother tightly. Jackson turned toward the burning wreck, jaw tight. He knew it wasn't over. Men like that didn't forget, didn't forgive. But he also knew this. If they came back, he'd be ready. As dawn painted the sky in pink and gold, the ranch stood scarred but alive. Jackson sat on the porch steps watching the horizon. Elara approached quietly, wrapping a blanket around his shoulders. "Thank you," she whispered. He looked up, eyes tired but warm. "Don't thank me yet. This isn't finished," she nodded. "Then we face it together." For a long moment, they just watched the sunrise, the silence between them heavier than words. But deep down, Jackson knew something had changed. Protecting her wasn't just duty anymore, it was purpose. Maybe redemption. Maybe something he'd lost long ago and just found again in her eyes. And as the wind carried the smell of smoke and new day, Jackson muttered under his breath, "No one can touch her." The promise was made. And promises on that land were sacred. If you felt that fire in this chapter, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for Chapter 2, where the darkness returns, and the promise is tested in ways no one could imagine. The sun rose cold the next morning, the kind of dawn that felt heavy with unspoken warning. Smoke still curled from the burned-out truck at the edge of the property, twisting into the pale sky like a dark omen. Jackson Reed stood by the fence, coat draped across his shoulders, eyes fixed on the horizon. His hands, calloused and scarred, gripped the wooden post as if it were the only thing anchoring him to the earth. He had seen blood before, had taken lives before, but this time something different stirred inside him. Maybe it was the way Elara had looked at him last night, not with fear, but with something like belief. Maybe it was the echo of his sister's voice in his memory, whispering from a time long buried, "You can't save everyone, Jax." But this time he would. Inside the ranch house, Cole sat at the kitchen table, head bowed, exhaustion carved into his face. Elara brewed coffee on the old stove, her hands still trembling slightly. "Do you think they'll come back?" she asked quietly. Cole looked up, eyes hollow. "Men like that don't stop until they get what they want." Jackson stepped inside, boots heavy on the wooden floor. "Then we give them a reason to stop." His tone was calm, but it carried a deadly certainty. Elara turned to face him. "You can't fight them all. They'll come with more men." Jackson poured himself a cup of coffee, his gaze never leaving hers. "Then they'll need more graves." Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain. Jackson knew what was coming, not just another attack, but a war. The men they'd faced weren't common thieves. They were part of the Vagos syndicate, a ruthless cartel that ran guns, drugs, and people through the border towns. And their leader, the one Jackson had shot in the shoulder, was named Marcus Vago, a man with no mercy and a long memory. By noon, the sheriff arrived, a stout man with tired eyes named Tom Avery. He'd known Jackson for years. They'd served together once, before Jackson left the force. "Heard there was trouble," Tom said, stepping over bullet casings. "You could say that," Jackson replied, lighting a cigarette. "They after the girl." Yeah, Tom exhaled slowly. You realize who you picked a fight with. Doesn't matter. It does if you want to live. Jackson looked out the window, toward where Elara stood in the field feeding the horses. I'll live. They won't. Tom shook his head. You can't save everyone, Jax. The words hit like a ghost's whisper. The same words his sister had said before she died. Jackson's jaw tightened. Watch me. When night fell again, the rain finally came heavy, relentless. The ranch turned to mud, thunder cracking across the valley. Elara stood at the window, watching the rain slide down the glass. I hate storms, she whispered. Jackson, sitting by the fire cleaning his rifle, glanced up. Storms wash the dirt off the land, he said. Sometimes they're needed. She turned toward him. Even when they destroy things too, he paused. Especially then. The power flickered, the old lights dimming. Cole burst into the room, breathless. They're back. His words sliced through the sound of thunder. Jackson was on his feet instantly, gun in hand. How many? Too many. Outside, the roar of engines grew louder. Through the sheets of rain, headlights cut through the dark. 4 trucks this time, maybe more. Men jumped out, shouting, armed with rifles. Marcus Vargo's voice boomed over the storm. You should have killed me when you had the chance, cowboy. Jackson stepped onto the porch, rain soaking his hat, lightning flashing across his face. You should have stayed gone. Vargo laughed. You're going to regret this, Reed. I'll take the girl, burn your land, and bury you in it. Jackson cocked his rifle. You'll have to get past me first. Then chaos erupted. Gunfire ripped through the night, muzzle flashes lighting the rain-soaked field. Cole fired from the barn loft, taking down one man. Jackson moved like a ghost through the storm, every shot precise, every step measured. He wasn't fighting for pride, he was fighting for redemption, for his sister, for Elara. Inside the house, Elara hid behind the old piano, praying, tears mixing with rain that leaked through the broken window. A bullet shattered the wall inches from her head. Jackson, she screamed. Jackson turned at the sound, heart pounding. He ran through the storm, cutting across the field. Vargo saw him and fired, missing by inches. Jackson dove behind the wagon, reloaded and fired back, hitting one of Vargo's men square in the chest. You can't win. Vargo shouted, voice echoing. You're one man. Jackson's voice came back steady as the thunder. One man's enough. Then came the moment that froze the night. Vargo, laughing like a madman, grabbed Elara as she tried to run from the porch. He pressed his gun to her head. Drop it, cowboy, he shouted. Jackson stopped dead, his rifle raised, rain pouring down his face. Let her go. You want her? Come get her. Lightning flashed. Time seemed to slow. Jackson's finger tightened on the trigger, but his mind flashed back to another night, another gun, another scream. His sister's scream. He'd hesitated then, and it had cost her life. Not this time. The thunder cracked, and so did Jackson's rifle. The bullet tore through the rain, striking Vargo square in the forehead. His body fell backward lifeless, pulling Elara with him into the mud. Silence followed, broken only by the rain. Cole ran to his sister, pulling her free. Jackson stood there for a moment, chest heaving, water streaming down his face. The war was over, but the cost still burned inside him. By dawn, the sheriff returned with deputies, hauling away the bodies. The ranch was scarred, fences broken, windows shattered. But the land still stood, and so did they. Tom clapped Jackson on the shoulder. You saved her. Jackson stared at the rising sun. No, she saved me. Elara walked toward him, barefoot in the wet grass, her hair tangled and face streaked with dirt. You didn't have to risk your life, she said softly. Yeah, I did. She smiled faintly. Why? Jackson looked at her, his voice low, because no one should live in fear, not while I'm around. The wind blew gently, carrying away the smoke, the blood, the memories. The land began to breathe again, and though the scars would remain, so would the promise. Jackson turned to her one last time, the corner of his mouth curving into the faintest smile. No one can touch you, Elara, not ever. And as the camera would fade, the words would echo like a vow across the valley, strong, unbreakable, and true.